Good morning. My name is Wendell Nicholson of the Northeast Church of Christ, and it's my privilege to present to you the Saturday morning Devo. You know what? Just been thinking about people, hard workers, people who do get things done, and the ways they do it. I remember a story that my dad told. It was a true happening. Let me start off by giving you a preface on it. My dad, when he was 16, it became his responsibility to take care of the family. It was, and by the family I mean his mom and his grandmother and his little sister all living at home. His dad died when he was very young. It was on him. They had a dry land farm back down in West Texas. It wasn't irrigated. Thus they called it a dry land farm. And in that part of the country, it didn't rain a lot. But they were able to scrape out a meager existence and survived. I doubt we could do that today. Most of us wouldn't call that surviving. But anyway, it became his responsibility to take over the farm and run it. His mom was a pretty good manager. She did pretty well. She had bought this old farm in difficult times, and it was a small farm, but they had a few cows and pigs, and they always kept things to keep the family fed. But Dad was the farmer. He had planted the cotton field, and they had an old tractor. I'll tell you about this old tractor. It was he had done some trading and got this old wore-out tractor. Don't even know what kind it was, but it was pretty wore out. In fact, he was forever having to stop in the middle of the field and change the bearings in it. It was just wore-out old tractor, but it was better to him than plowing behind horses. Because that's the way he started out doing it, was having to plow behind horses. But he traded for this old tractor, and it planted their field this year, and it didn't look too bad, dry land cotton, you know, and it came a rain. Well, they needed the rain, but it kept raining, and it kept raining, and it was a washing rain. It had just washed things out. It looked terrible. It looked terrible. It looked hopeless. In fact, the neighbors around they were plowing it up and replanting. And they told Dad. He was a 16-year-old kid, and so they thought, well, he needs some help. They told him, you need to plow it up and start over. But Dad said, in his mind, it was washed out, but he could see where the rows were, and he could kind of curve the rows around a little bit. It's not like he was going to be irrigating it anyway. So he set the plows on this old tractor to where he could put it in first gear and just chug along real slow, and he plowed around those and laid a little furrow up around the cotton where he could see where it was going to be, and he could, of course, see that he wasn't going to have a bumper crop because it had washed away. But he kept this up and just kind of laid this furrow up around the cotton that he could find the rows, and all the neighbors were laughing at him, telling him, you can't have a crop out of that. You need to plow it up and start over. But he didn't. He didn't want to do it. You know, there again, West Texas, you don't get all that many rains. He wanted to take advantage of the moisture in the ground. But when he got through, it didn't look half bad. It was it was crooked and spotty, and because he very carefully plowed it in areas where he thought he could make a crop. Well, he did make a crop. It grew, and it looked pretty good. It was not a bumper crop by any means, but they never got any more rain. And the other farmers that had plowed up and replanted did not make any kind of a crop. And so all that, he'd been laughing at Dad for all what he was doing and not plowing it up and starting over like everybody else. But they began to listen to him a little bit after that, this 16-year-old kid, because he was the only one in the whole little Canyon Valley area that made a crop at all. And he was able to pay the bills. He didn't make any bumper crop, but he paid the bills because he was persistent and keeping and plowing that up and taking care of it. And he was the only hoe hand. He'd grab a hoe and he'd weed the crop, and he did it all by himself pretty much. He had maybe a little help, but not much. It was kind of on his own, but he made a good crop. A decent crop. At least he paid his bills. Nobody else was paying their bills. I say all this to say that sometimes we just need to keep on keeping on. And there's times when we feel like quitting, throwing up our hands. We just not very persistent in, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do this. And quitting is never the right answer. There may be some change, some ways, but don't quit. You see these little posters all around all the different places saying, never give up, don't quit. I remember the frog on some kind of a bird that's probably what he eats is frogs, and this bird had swallowed this frog, and these hands were coming out, and they had a hold of that bird's neck, and it said, never give up. That frog wasn't giving up, he was hanging on. I think of in Luke, there's two places. In chapter 18, for instance, a certain city, a judge who did not fear God nor regarded man, and it was a widow in that same city, and she came to him saying, get justice for me from my adversary. And he would not, because he didn't care, he didn't care anything about her. But she kept coming to him. This is Luke 18, beginning in verse 2. But she kept coming to him, and finally he said, she's going to wear me out. And so she gave her justice from her adversary. We don't know the details, but because she kept coming to him, he took care of her. And then in Luke 11, remember the guy had gone to bed, and his neighbor came to him and said, I have a traveler, a friend that has come, and I don't have anything to give him to eat. And he's knocking on the door, and he said, go away, I'm in bed, my kids are in bed, we don't have time to get up and take care of you. Can't get up and take care of you. But he kept knocking, he kept asking. Finally, the guy threw up his hands, in my mind, and said, okay, I'm going to take care of him. So he got up and took care of him so he could get some sleep and his family could get some sleep. Sometimes being persistent will get you what you need. Or to be persistent in prayer, to pray without ceasing. I see persistence in that, don't you? Pray without ceasing. Our prayer should have persistence. Our life should have persistence in many ways, especially when it comes to lost souls. We should keep trying. Sometimes we think, well, this person has left the church or left God, and there's nothing we can do about that. Well, don't be so sure. You never know what we can do. Kind of like the widow that kept hounding the judge until he gave her justice. Kind of like the neighbor who kept hounding his neighbor for some bread, and he finally got up and gave him some bread for his friend who came on this journey. Too often, we're not so persistent. I always think of my dad and carefully farming that. Everybody making fun of him. All these older people have farmed all their lives making fun of this 16-year-old because he didn't do what everybody else was doing. And he's the only one that made a crop. Now, what if it had gotten more rain? Would he have done? He probably would have done better. And the others probably would have made a good crop too if the rain had fallen right. But he was able to keep that crop weeded in his persistent care that he actually made a crop. Today, I want us to think about how our lives are. Are we too quick to give up on people? I am so often too quick to give up on people. Are we, I guess, lazy is the reason we give up on people sometimes? I find that maybe, I hate to think of myself lazy, but sometimes that's true. I just don't get up and get around like I should. Don't do things that I know I should do. How about you? Don't we need to be persistent, keep on keeping on, not give up on people, not give up on God? God will take care of it. If we can help you in any way, you can give us a call. You can contact us at the Northeast Church of Christ on our website, or you can give us a call at our office. No, you can't give us a call at our office. There's nobody there. But get in touch with us on our website, northeastchurchofchrist.org. Thanks for listening to this message.